Well, folks, in today's video, we visit the OVAR flea market in Ottawa, Ontario. This was a show which happened back in March, hence why there's still some snow on the ground, and it ended up being a great day. I met a lot of really nice people, some of whom actually watch this channel, and I was also able to give away some stuff and buy some really interesting things as well. So let me take you all along for the tour and show you all of the cool things there were to see here. So starting off, we've got a variety of budget locomotives. These were all being sold for $4 a piece in as-is condition. Just beside that, I found this box of British N-scale stuff for $5. Then they had some larger locomotives like this Rivarossi Big Boy. They also had this little Japanese 040, all made out of metal, which looked kind of cool. There was a little bit in terms of stuff which was new in the box, including a Australian locomotive by Powerline, which I really would not expect to see here. They had some N-scale locomotives in rolling stock, and then just beside that there was a guy selling some British steam locomotives, which all appeared to be in pretty good condition. This vendor right here had an entire estate for sale, and he said I could go through the boxes if I wanted, so I decided to have a quick look, and I didn't end up finding anything too out of the ordinary, but it's always worth checking. Once in a while when you're digging through a box like this, you might find some real treasure, so I always have a look. The same seller also had some HO locomotives for sale, including this Bachmann CN engine, a Tyco chassis system, some sort of locomotive from a company called Big Lumber, and then there was this Burlington switcher engine from Bachmann, a 480 from Mantua Tyco, a Bachmann consolidation, a whole bunch of really kind of just typical 80s era HO locomotives like this Bachmann Texas Chugger, another consolidation. Then you had this bin which had more kind of 70s and 80s era HO scale locomotives. Really nothing too out of the ordinary. Over at another table, there was a guy selling some HO scale trucks. I've never heard of this brand before, but they look to have been made in about the 1950s. He also had a Bachmann Spectrum Norfolk Western steam locomotive, and a whole variety of different HO rolling stock. A lot of this stuff was being sold for $5 a piece and had knuckle couplers, which is pretty impressive. It also had some really nice Canadian National passenger cars, as well as some ones from Canadian Pacific. Then there was some lower-end rolling stock and a whole bunch of different 1950s-era box cars. The same table also had a whole bunch of different second-hand locomotives for sale, the majority of which were diesels, but they did have a few steam engines as well. Gotta say, I felt like the prices at this show were overall very good, especially when you consider that everything being sold here was in Canadian dollars. Now we'll move on to the final stand, and this is actually where I was giving some stuff away. There'll be more on that later, but first let's head home and I'll show you all the different things I decided to buy while I was at this show. Well, here we are back home from the train show, and as you can see, I did end up buying a few things which I'm really excited to show you all. I had so much fun at this year's train show. It really was a great time. There was a lot of really cool stuff to look through. I feel like I made off with some great deals, and moreover, I met some really interesting people, some of whom actually watch this channel, and it's just kind of such a sense of community when you actually get to know some of the people who are, commenting on these videos, so that was very cool. Anyways, moving on to the purchases I decided to make. The first thing I bought was this bi-level car, and when the show was opening I spotted this thing, and the guy wanted $20 for it, which was a really incredible deal. These things go for an arm and a leg on eBay, usually like at least $100, so for 20 bucks it's not a bad deal. It's one of the older models, so the detail is really not incredible, but I'm personally not bothered by that. In terms of more passenger cars, a few months ago I bought a Canadian National steam locomotive, number 6401, and I've been looking for some passenger cars, and these fit the bill. I managed to buy the entire lot for $60. They're old Athearn cars. I find these usually roll pretty well, especially if you add some good weight to them, and they've got metal knuckle couplers and everything else you'd want. One thing that was a little bit strange, however, was that it actually came with 3 different baggage cars. I really don't know what the deal with that is, but for the price I really can't complain. I really just can't wait to put these all behind that steam locomotive and just see how they look. Now, early on at the show, when I first spotted that little 040 steam locomotive, I was pretty determined to get it, and apparently it's in good working order. It claims to be a post-war locomotive, which I'd believe. I'd suspect it was probably made in the 70s or 80s, maybe early 90s. You tell me in the comments. But yeah, it overall looked to be in pretty good shape. They only wanted $20 for it. With all metal construction, you really just can't go wrong at that sort of price. And then right here is the lot of British N-scale stuff. And for $5, I mean, you just can't go wrong. You've got a locomotive right here, got some sort of passenger car, got a Shell tank car, a little gondola of some sort. This almost looks like it's off the Orient Express or something. Even a little brake van. So we'll have to test all that out, but I just figured for the price, really just can't go wrong with something like that. Now, my friend Canadian Behavior was giving some stuff away alongside me at the show, and this was one of the things he had. Apparently, he bought this in a lot, and somebody tried to add DCC to it. It's actually out of one of those Hogwarts Express train sets, and it looks to have had a pretty rough go at things. Somebody really went to town with the weathering. The wiring and mechanicals and everything else on this locomotive are really not the most desirable, so nobody ended up taking this thing. So I figured I would and just see if we could maybe try to turn this locomotive around. It doesn't look great, but I definitely wouldn't call it hopeless. One guy was selling a bunch of different tools, and he had this miniature vise, and I decided to get this thing. He only wanted $4 for it. Made in Japan, and I just feel like something like this could be very handy for different projects. If I need to press, a worm gear onto a motor, or maybe press some wheels onto an axle, this is just going to be a very even way of doing that. And for the price, you just really can't complain. This right here was another Canadian Behavior find. This came from the same lot as the Hogwarts Express. I don't really know what somebody did with this engine. It looks like they tried to combine a Smokey Joe with something else, and well, it doesn't look great, especially since this has all kind of come apart as well. I bet it would probably still run, but I mean, the tops of these cylinders are supposed to be sealed off, so as it is, it might jam up a little bit, but we'll have to test it out. I did end up deciding to get the Burlington switcher, and when I was looking at this thing, I noticed that it is actually all-wheel drive, which is not something I would expect for such a locomotive. It also has a can motor, which you can see right there, and decent weight, so I'm going to be really curious to see how this thing runs. It just seemed like a really nifty engine, and instead of it being a 4-wheel model, it's actually got 6 wheels, so I think that it might perform a little bit better. We'll have to try it out. Now, for $4, I really couldn't resist this locomotive. It's a Spirit of 76 4-wheel switcher. I didn't even know that they made these until I saw it. I don't know if it's gonna run. The gears look pretty rough, but I mean, it's a Spirit of 76. I mean, these things are just awesome. I already have a whole bunch of the other ones, like the C630 and the 430s and a couple of the F units, so I just figured, why pass this up at such a price? Even if this thing doesn't run, they're very easy to get going again, so it might make for a fun project if it happens to have any issues. Then we got some stuff which actually still has its box. I don't think this is the original box for this Mahano engine. I suspect this is probably one of the ones which was sold in one of those President's Choice train sets. Pretty confident that it runs. I mean, these things are pretty darn reliable, so we'll have to test that thing out. And then right here, we got something which I was really curious about. This was another engine I think they only wanted $4 or $5 for. I haven't seen this exact paint scheme before, nor have I heard of this railroad. It looks to be an Alco of some sort. I think it is a C630, but it's got the shorter hood on the front there. But the thing that I was really interested about was that it comes with this box, which I think might be one of Mahano's first products. I could be mistaken, but this was, their full name. So I'll have to check that out. It's also cool. It has the original price tag on it, $24 at Fantastic Toys and Models. If any of you know anything about this shop or this model, please put it down in the comments. And then finally, we've got the Locomotive by Powerline from Australia. Now, it was actually my friend Nick who was walking around, and he was the first one to spot this thing, and he let me know about it because he knew I was looking for different Australian locomotives. They wanted $85 for it. It's not dirt cheap, but, you see how much these things go for brand new, and it's certainly a lot more. And you don't find a ton of Australian locomotives for sale here in Canada, so I just figured, hey, why not? It looks like it's got a really cool paint scheme. I don't know anything about it. I haven't done any research on it yet. I've already owned one Powerline locomotive, and so far I've been happy with it, so why not add another? And I mean, just look at that. It's only got 4-wheel drive, but looks to be in really good shape, so we'll have to test it out and see how it runs. So there's everything I decided to buy at the show. Let's take all this stuff over the track and test it all out now. Okay, well, I've got everything all ready to rock and roll here. We'll start off with the Burlington 6-wheel switcher. I'm really curious to see how this thing is going to run. I suspect it's going to start. Let's try giving it some power here. And unfortunately, if we set it up on the track here, you can see that we got a working headlight, but the current draw is pretty much nothing, so the motor is not picking up any power. Could be an issue with the brushes, could be an issue with the wiring going to the motor, but something is clearly not quite right there, so that should make for a fun project. Next, we got the Japanese steam locomotive. We'll see if this thing will go. Huh. Yeah, that seems half decent. Pulling a lot more amperage than I'd like to see, especially for a locomotive of its size, and I don't know why it keeps getting stuck in the same section of track. Yeah, actually, that's starting to slug down, so that's not great. It's definitely going to need some work, but at least it is running. That's definitely a good start. And now we got the Mahano here. Huh. Well, I'll be darned, absolutely nothing. That's really rare. You don't see these fail too often. Oh, interesting. This one was actually sold as an AHM. Guess we'll try the old Hogwarts Express here now. I mean, this thing has just been MacGyvered so badly, I really don't know if it's actually going to do anything, but maybe some of these wires are still working. I'm certainly not going to try to run it for very long because all sorts of different things might be binding up, but let's try it out. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's all locking up because the drive shafts are all screwed up, but that's actually pretty impressive considering what has been done to this engine. I'll try out the one from the Land Down Under. Yeah, it seems to run quite nicely. This locomotive must have quite a gear reduction because you can hear how high the motor's revving, but relative to that, it's not moving too quickly, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to see that it runs pretty well. So we'll try out the Smoky Joe. I think this thing is going to start, again, just like the other one. I don't want to run it for too long because I don't want all that binding up. Oh, that was funny. Well, it doesn't sound very healthy. That's not too much of a surprise, but at least it does run. Really don't know if this one's going to go. Again, those gears look kind of rough, but let's give it a chance here. Come on. It's trying. Yeah, there we go. Just needs to break in a little bit. It's definitely been sitting for a while. Well, still not loving it, but it is starting to power through it. With a little bit of a cleaning, I think this locomotive could probably be a decent runner. Now let's try out the Mahano. Well, it's definitely been run, I can tell you that much. Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, it's running pretty rough. It definitely needs a wheel cleaning, there's no doubt about that. Okay, well, that one needs a little bit of love, but it's not too bad. Got the new bi-level all set up, doing a bit of a trial run here on the layout, and it looks pretty good. I also went ahead and set up all the Canadian National cars, and they just look fantastic behind this locomotive. It's nice to see this have a complete train. Still a little bit weird having, 3 baggage cars, but some people really like to bring everything but the kitchen sink when they travel, so this might just be the train for them. Anyways, let's see how it runs here. Nice. Well, I'm really happy with how all the new rolling stock is performing. I haven't had any derailing issues, so now let's move on to testing out the N-scale stuff. Let's see what $5 gets you in terms of British N-scale stuff. Nothing. Yeah, that one doesn't seem too inclined to start up. Let's still try out the rolling stock. Well, these cars don't want to stay together or really roll all that well. So I think I understand now why all this stuff was being sold so cheap. Now that's almost it for today's video, but just before I do, I just wanted to bring this stuff up. As I mentioned earlier, I was giving stuff away at the train show, and a lot of things managed to find new homes, but all this stuff you see right here did not. So if any of you out there want this stuff, just leave a comment down below. It just has to include some kind of sign that you're interested in it, because I do realize there's probably going to be a lot of people out here who don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. But yeah, at some point I will do a draw, and if the comment that gets picked indicates that you want this stuff, it might be yours. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and with that, I just want to thank you all so much for watching.